Is Manila ready for a big quake? Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to BluPrint Conversations. This is your host, Manolet Garcia. And today's episode is quite exciting because I would be conversing with a very well-respected guru in the Academy of Architecture. Let us all welcome architect AJ Javier. Welcome to the show, AJ. We were discussing the issues on how to make Manila disaster ready. And I have always thought that an architect plays a very important role. So what is your take on this?
The architect, by his technical training, is responsible for foresighting very far ahead on how human behavior will pan out in different situations. So in terms of disaster readiness and responsiveness, the architect has a very critical role in this whole business. The designer need to immerse himself in community, make himself relevant, and collaborate with community. I always believe, and this is the doctrine that I teach in academia, that design is for everyone. And disaster resiliency is a very important subject. The architect is there to provide the technical guidance, to inspire, to trigger the decisions. But essentially, it's the public that needs to be the mover of this design. Say you are in a critical area, let's say Navotas. The duty of the designing professionals to activate within the public this sense of design that will already predict how they will behave when the floods or the river tide rises. The emerging, more responsive concept would be adaptability, which is more overarching than resilience. Because you cannot be adaptable, you cannot adapt if you are not alive. And resiliency is necessary to be alive to adapt. The public knows adaptability by its knee-jerk nature. Na dating na yung baha, then I save my kin. And then next, I save my papeles. And then, So, but if there has been a collaboration between designer and owner of house, the adaptation model would have been, I know that the floods will come because I'm in Navotas. There is no political nor economic solution that will come down from the heavens and extract me from where I am. So, designer, architect, what can we do so that my house can aid me in surviving? The kind of architecture that houses look like will slowly start to morph and change more so that it will now respond to waters coming in.
The other city that I was thinking of is also Marikina. And we all know Marikina has a history. Can you just imagine if, at the very onset, an architect heads how all houses should be designed, all houses should, or the community be designed. It would really spell, the very essence of that community being disaster ready.
Whenever I go into discussions about community activation through design, the tripartite role of government, professional, and academe always comes up. Normally, the traditional trigger would be academe because we are in charge of educating the young professional
unless of course the government staff are all educated architecturally and they have some background in urban planning.
Yes, Singapore's Lee Kuan Yew mentioned that when they were ejected from the Malaysian Federation, they don't have the luxury of reading poetry that time because they needed to build up their house and fix the finances, put discipline and put order, build the nation in short. But now they are reading poetry, singing the songs, dancing the dances. And this is the time when the Singaporeans are design savvy. They know what they deserve as far as design is concerned. We have not reached that, but we are getting there.
The public is now clamoring for good design.
It is a work in progress.
Let's go to the design education. As an architect, we also have some courses in planning.
Yes.
And would you still believe that in order for us to have a well-designed community, do we really need urban planners, or we can, as an architect, we can also do that?
The public now needs to partner and to be held hands with an urban planner because he is, in fact, still trained to manage information as large as it is.
Right.
But I still maintain that the urban planner needs to do the consultative work. It must be a bottom-to-top approach,
Okay.
which I feel has been a grave mistake of the 70s and 80s model of development, which is a top-to-bottom approach. People are now more aware.
Okay.
There is social media that documents every disaster that
Right.
happens in every corner of this country
Right.
and even abroad. When I talk to students, they would ask, would there be special modules or units that would deal with responsive design classes
Activity, yes.
on disaster
Right.
or on community management.
Right.
Basically, the basic doctrine that this teaches is that it is not just the sole responsibility of the architect to design built environments that are ready to admit disaster adaptability. It needs
okay.
to be the business of community.
Right.
It needs to be the business of government, the business of business, more so. If government cannot support you because it is not enlightened enough,
Right.
business need to come in. But business needs to make money.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by another tripartite role of business, government, and public.
In your experience, in that tripartite, thread of discussion, I'm sure you've seen, countries that have that. Is that something we should benchmark on?
Those
or-
countries and economies that I've seen did not need a tripartite
oh, really?
partnership.
Why
They
is
just
that
needed
so?
a bilateral relationship with
Between-
government and population and community.
Okay.
Because government is wealthy and enlightened enough.
Okay, and maybe government is already comprising of
Yes,
educated architects, planners,
that's
engineers,
right.
and all
Yes,
that.
yes.
And not just politicians and businessmen.
Exactly. The way that business is coming in our situation is because of the weakness of government.
Right.
It's very hard to mobilize at the national
Really.
I don't know, you know how
Yeah,
things
yeah.
happen with the Yolanda programs.
Right.
But even then, in the Yolanda interventions, it's really private individuals, private corporations.
Right. And international.
Yes.
And these are the ones who are really swiftly responding. AJ, if you had it your way, you've been given a blanket authority to make a difference, to disrupt the current status, how would you want it to be?
I would like a voting population
All right.
that will demand for what they deserve. It really starts from there because
Right.
when the population knows what they deserve,
Deserve, yes.
and then they will get it. And then it will now trickle down from there. They will demand from the designers, this is what you should do for me.
Okay, I'd like to ask you in this conversation, whether it's an earthquake, whether it's a tsunami, they are just ready. And which communities or countries do you look at?
Japan is a happy place.
Okay.
It's not only a happy place, it's my happy place.
All right.
Because it's a design paradise.
And to think that it's a country that has earthquakes every day,
That's right.
they have tsunamis every so often,
Yeah.
and yet they prosper. They just don't survive. They prosper.
Yes.
And will it ever be like that with us?
Yeah. Maybe give ourselves half a century.
AJ, I have a very challenging question that I'd like to ask you. Is Manila ready for a big quake?
Systemically, as a society living in the metropolis, we are not organized. Second, the infrastructure is not ready,
Right.
which is tied together with the system
Right.
that governs us. The disaster doesn't have political boundaries.
Right.
That's why we are not ready.
Okay, I'd like to, wrap this conversation in a positive note. So, can you honestly say there is hope for us?
Yes, always.
Always.
There needs to be this attitude of questioning already.
Okay.
You start to challenge and question the status quo. You challenge government, you challenge community leaders, you challenge yourself
Right.
on the rightness and the wrongness of your design decisions,
Right.
on certain policies.
Right.
And it's essentially that. When this never-ending questioning
Right.
culture happens, then the wheels of development
Right,
run
right.
faster.
Well, thank you very much, AJ.
Thank you.
That was really a fascinating discussion on disaster management and disaster readiness of our communities.
Yeah,
Thank
I'm
you
happy
very
to talk
much.
about it with you.